Good afternoon. Welcome to EduSet Network. Friend, as you are aware, we have organized series of lecture on changing world dynamics in India. Yesterday we discussed in detail India relation with Asian countries. Today we will move further and we will talk about the Indo-US relation in the context of recent happening the world over, and we will see how the US changing their policy, and in that case what India can do to protect its interest. And for discussion on this topic, we have in a studio a very eminent personalities, Dr. Rajiv Nayan. He is Senior Research Associate in one of the premier institutions, IDSA, Institute of Defense Study and Analysis, and his area of specialization is Indo-US relation and related issues. So on your behalf, I welcome Dr. Rajiv Nayan for EduSet lecture on this very topic. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amrinder Kumar. Thanks for choosing this topic for discussions, which is, as you rightly mentioned, is quite relevant. And I am going to discuss about the relevance of the topic and why it is relevant for India. World changes, and there is no contest about it. The human civilization is a witness to the changes taking place inside their country, inside the world, because of the structural factors. We know ancient Indian civilization, we know ancient Chinese civilization. We know about Roman Empire, we know about Egyptian civilization. Later, we know about the emergence of Islamic tradition, and the Islamic tradition was replaced by the Christian tradition, or you can say broadly the European tradition. The European continent started dominating the world and started shaping its nature with its values. And one of the values which really dominated all over the world and which is still dominating is the Westphalian order. So we will discuss about it later when we start discussing about the India-US relationship. So now we are in the 21st century, and the 21st century has got its own dynamics. And this dynamics is called as 21st century Asian century. In what way it is an Asian century? Because of the emergence of two countries, rising China and rising Asia. So which are just indicating that the world is going to get a new shape, a new nature. And what will be the nature of the world after the emergence of Asia? Are the only Asian countries shaping the emergence of the new world order, or there are other countries also? These questions are coming. No doubt there are other countries also, like Turkey, Russia, South Asia, Brazil, which are also determining the new outcome of the world order. But predominantly, I would again say it is an Asian order, an Asian century. New institutions are coming. G20 is emerging as a new institution. G8 is being replaced by G20. What is this G20? So many factors and so many things can be said about its emergence. But one basic or fundamental fact is, it is a balancing institution of G8 countries and a developing world, which otherwise represented itself through G77 and other South institutions. So now this G20 is in fact mediating the two diverse forces existing in the world, developed and the developing world, and they are trying to harmonize, or you can say syncretize, or you may say synergize the efforts so that the humanity is benefited. What are implications of rising Asia? I am discussing all these issues to contextualize the relevance, the importance of India and India-US relationship. Definitely it is indicating a world in transition. The again question comes up, what kind of changes the world would undergo, and will Westphalia will be replaced by Eastphalia? Some of eminent writers on international relations are talking about it, and the most important is Professor Sumit Ganguly and other people, Kishore Mahbubani. All these people are just discussing. Kishore Mahbubani is visualizing and you can theorizing the rising Asia, and his argument is the rising Asia doesn't mean the replacement of the Westphalian order. He believes that all the golden cardinal principles of the Westphalian order are being perpetuated or being maintained by the new rising Asian countries. So, this is the one is challenging the old values and the ordering principle of the old order. So, this is the situation. So, means there will be adaptation, and this adaptation will really shape, or you can say this show or demonstrate the emerging nature of the world order, or you can say will demonstrate the dynamics, emerging dynamics of the world. Then comes the question, what will happen to existing great powers? The end of Cold War somewhat reshaped the old Soviet Union's successor Russia's position in the world. Now, from superpower, it is being seen as a rising power. It is not being seen as a great power despite its military assets. And Europe, people are discussing about Europe. What will happen to Europe? No doubt Europe is declining, Japan is declining, but their assets will be there. What will happen to those assets? That will be a big question for the world to discuss, debate and determine. But today I am going to talk about US. So, a bit I will talk about the position of US in the international system. The United States was one of the superpowers after the Second World War, which is generally known as Cold War. Another superpower was Soviet Union. The end of the Cold War ended the supremacy, or you can say the dominance, or you can say somehow equal status of the successor of the Soviet Union, that is Russia. And the post Cold War period was basically the period of unipolar moment for United States. The world was determined, or world was called as unipolar world, and the moment, or you can say the period, was called as unipolar moments. United States determined the outcomes, the law and the institution of the world. No international law and no international institutions can be changed or could have been changed earlier without the consent of United States. And this made any country's relationship with United States quite relevant. Now people are talking about the decline of United States. With the rise of Asia, is United States declining? This is one big question. Generally, the talk is done by some of the intellectuals working in different institutions and universities of United States, and quite dominantly or predominantly by Democrat intellectuals. Whenever Republicans come to power, the talk of the decline of United States starts taking place. When they refer to the term decline of United States, generally they refer to the decline of soft power of United States, not its hard power, not its economic power. Before that also, on several occasions, actually the intellectuals inside United States raised this issue. And in 1950s, we heard about the decline of United States, but United States kept prospering. Then in 1990, when Japan was rising and the yen was rising, was the talking point. At that time also, several intellectuals talked about the rise of yen and the decline of dollars, and the decline of United States as a result of that. But the United States did not decline. There were several factors because of which United States again rebound, or you can say resurfaced on the international system. And the most important factor was its dominant soft power, its dominant knowledge power, its military power, its economic power. So, all these factors made United States a comprehensive superpower. And what will happen in coming decades, we should ponder about that also. Even the most enthusiastic philosopher of rising Asia, that is Kishore Mahbubani, says that United States will decline, but even by 2050, even Kishore Mahbubani talks about that United States will be the third largest economy of the world. So, can we ignore a country that is the third largest economic power, even by the philosopher of doom, even by the philosopher who has been talking about the decline of the other continents and the rise of Asia? So, we have to be very objective about assessing how we should conduct our relationship. It has got military power, it has got innovative power, it is a knowledge power. So, all these factors are still continuing, and all these factors, all these aspects of power will continue in the coming decades also. So, let us not just ignore United States because it is declining. So, how we should develop the relationship, and before we start discussing it, I think we should discuss what has been the nature of the relationship, what is its current status, and what was the relationship before. As we know, United States and India both are democracies, both fought their struggles of independence from the British Empire. India won its independence in 1947, United States won in 1777, their famous War of Independence, and later they won the war. So, means in 18th century US won its War of Independence, and later it started developing a policy, and it adopted an isolationist policy in the beginning, so that it could pay attention to, it can focus on, it can concentrate on economic development of the country. But there was a common thread. India, after becoming independent, also chose for a democratic pattern of government. India chose an economy which was not capitalist, but we generally called it mixed economy. And this economy had an element of socialism, and it also had an element of capitalism. By capitalism, I mean the importance or the scope or the space given to private enterprises, innovation, profit, all these factors. So, India was not against, you can say, regulated capitalism. India also promoted that, and in fact that brought India, United States to cooperate in some areas in initial years of India's independence. But by and large, the India-United States relationship is called that of a relationship of strange democracies. Somehow these two democracies could not work together after India became independent. Then comes the questions, were they always so, and what were the factors which led to the characterization of the relationship between the two countries as strange democracies. And I would first touch the phases, the evolving relationship of the two countries quite briefly, and I would state, or I would assert in academic term, that the relationship was never monolithic. The relationship evolved, and it witnessed ups and downs. In the first phase, and that is the early Cold War period, the relationship was quite mixed. It had an element of optimism, an element of suspicion both. But both countries were interacting. They were exploring to determine the vista of the relationship. After this 1962 war, when India was defeated by China, we saw a sympathetic United States coming out to help India. But that was just a brief period. United States sympathized with India, and several archives of United States are unearthing documents which even, these documents are demonstrating that the United States even proposed, or United States was even ready to help India for its nuclear weapons, although still people are muted to discuss that. But the basic thrust is that the United States was willing to work with India, willing to support India in its multidimensional efforts. But as I told, it was a very brief period. And then we saw the emergence of the axis, US, China and in Pakistan axis, which once again soured the relationship. And this was the period when nuclear non-proliferation treaty was negotiated, signed by the countries, and it entered into force, and to explain it simply, it became operational, which continued to determine the relationship of India and United States for years, and I would not hesitate, I would say that it is for decades. So this was the situation. Then came 1979, when Soviet Union got involved in Afghanistan. United States wanted India to take a position. India called that phase or that involvement unfortunate, but it was not ready to move more. It did not support involvement of Soviet Union, but it did not support United States efforts to fight with the Soviet Union. And at that time Pakistan came, and Pakistan aligned with United States, and that alignment had disastrous consequences for the world, and not only for India, for the world. Let me emphasize why. I will just discuss it briefly. Because of that involvement, we saw the strengthening of the emergence of Taliban. United States was bluffed by Pakistan. On the one hand, Mujahideen were used to fight Soviet troops, and on the other, they were also groomed to develop to become a monster, the monster that really troubled the world later. What happened then? Second disaster was the making of Pakistani bomb, and all these forces or all these facts have been documented. And one of the documents, some of the documents I would say have been put on the website, and those documents indicate that United States establishment kept ignoring the knowledge of Pakistani nuclear bomb. One of the State Department desk officers kept highlighting the making of nuclear weapons by Pakistan, how it is stealing technologies and trying to develop nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles. But for the sake of alliance, for the sake of United States involvement in Afghanistan, Pakistan was simply overlooked. And the third disastrous factor, or you can say disastrous consequence, was the acquisition of arms by Pakistan in the name of fighting Soviet troops. And these arms were later used not only against India, but against several other countries. It was supplied to Afghanistan, and Taliban forces used these weapons. So this was the phase. The Cold War ended, but India's relationship with United States did not improve much, and the non-proliferation regime kept defining the relationship of the two countries. This was tense, it became tense later, more tense after India conducted its 1998 series of nuclear tests, and in United States imposed sanctions on India, although it was later rolled back, and the relationship was just reached the lowest period, lowest ebb, I should say. But efforts were on to improve the relationship. India was explaining its position, why it conducted nuclear tests, why it is necessary for its security, and what were the problems with the non-proliferation regime, and how India and United States can really make a world more secure, more peaceful, and more stable. And the most important development, or you can say the force which shaped the subsequent India-United States relationship which happened at that time, was divergence, just one thing's rounds of talks. And through these rounds of talks, India tried to convince the higher decision making of United States. And it seemed United States realized that when 9/11 happened, United States saw a role for India, although it was not made a partner in its effort to fight terrorism. It continued, and sanctions were rolled back. Sanctions were later completely removed from the country, and relationship started growing. And then come the most important phase of the relationship, and that was July 2005 agreements. Generally, the world remembers one phrase, one event, that is Indo-US nuclear deal. But in reality, just a few days before that famous July 18, 2005 agreement, India and United States signed a framework agreement for defense cooperation, and that is generally not discussed much in India. It was discussed, but not discussed much in India, and that was also a beginning of a new phase of the relationship. And in fact, this phase is continuing. We are trying to overcome our differences, we are trying to overcome our points of divergence, and we are trying to increase our points of convergence. And in fact, this is continuing. Then I will just briefly discuss what were the points of estrangement between the two countries. The first was United States was the leader of the Western military bloc. It wanted India, a democratic country, a country which had got a space for capitalism, to join the bloc. Nehru did not join the bloc. What did Nehru do? Nehru chose the non-alignment route, and Nehru wanted India to remain away from global power politics. Nehru wanted India to not get involved in power politics of the time, and in fact, that shaped India's foreign policies, and that shaped India's approach to the world. United States did not like India's approach, and later India also came closer to the socialist bloc, and more especially the Soviet Union, and that also somewhat annoyed United States. It did not want India to come closer to United States. It tried to reason out with India, but India had its own strategic interests. And the time, if you remember, when India came closer to Soviet Union was in the early 70s, when I just discussed US, China, Pakistan axis had come into being. India had to safeguard its own national interests. United States had sided with China and Pakistan, two of the countries of concern, or say country of security issues, security problems of India. So India definitely had to take some measures, and India did take those measures. United States had military pacts with Pakistan, and one of the pacts is known as Baghdad Pact. The second pact is known as Southeast Asia Treaty Organization. United States and Pakistan worked there, and this came in the way. This was a big irritant, and in a way it became a factor of estrangement of the relationship between the two countries. India had its nuclear ambitions, space ambitions. India was launching its satellites into space. It was developing its satellite launch vehicles, and we all know India became a major and important space power, and United States suspected that through these peaceful development programs, India may develop itself as a missile power, India may develop itself as a nuclear weapon power, and that struggle was continuing between the two countries, and it was leading to estrangement. India was not ready to accept the American overtures. India was not ready to accept the Western dictation, how it should behave and how it should shape its security and science and technology policy. So, this were leading to the problem. But there were some silver linings also, and one of the silver linings I should say was people to people contact. Even if the two governments were struggling to bring the relationship on an even keel, people were going to United States for different purposes. United States was a country of innovation, it was a country of education. The people of India were going to United States to take higher education, and education which had got value not only for enlightenment but also for profession, also for job, also for personality development. And this phase led to the entry of India into several scientific institutions of India, and it is well known, it is a well known fact that Indian scientists are in large number in NASA, United States Agency for Space Administration. So, this is how we kept entering into that. And then was a Chinese factor, and Chinese factor always somehow, despite the brief period when US, China and Pakistan axis came into being, the United States understood India's problems, and it dealt with it quite sympathetically on most of the occasions. So, that was also a silver lining. The existence of, and there was an existence of strong force in both countries which wanted India and the United States to come closer, to work for innovation, to work for science and technology development, work for humanity, work for democracy, work for so many other issues of the world which may really help the world in growing, India growing, United States growing. And now we can discuss why this relationship is really relevant at the moment. The first, in the beginning I talked about uncertain nature of rising Asia and China. We need a country which can work with us in managing this uncertain nature of rising China and Asia. When there is no denial, there are no two views, there are no two opinions, that we have not very smooth or easy relationship with China. And could we do it alone? The answer is no. If the answer is no, then we need friends who will come to work with you to manage the uncertain nature of Asia and uncertain nature of China. The Chinese regime which is modernizing its armed forces, the Chinese regime which is opaque in nature, Chinese regime which has got so many problems, and those problems got extended to the Indian borders also. We had witnessed some tense moments on our borders vis-a-vis China. So we have to work with a friendly country. And as I discussed, despite the decline, the talk of the decline of United States, it has got strengths. It has got strengths in the military realm. It has got strengths in other areas also. So it is a soft power. It is a country which is willing to get engaged in affairs of the world. It is a country which is willing to work with you on issues of international relations or problems of international politics. So obviously we would love to work with this country, and in fact we started a strategic dialogue with this country. We recognize its strategic relevance, and that's why in July 2009 India and United States began the current phase of strategic dialogue, and just now we completed in June the third round of strategic dialogue. In July also we had the second round of strategic dialogue. We have been talking, and now we have come out with the 5 pillars of a strategic relationship. First is strategic cooperation, second is energy and climate change, third is education and development, fourth is economics, trade and agriculture, and fifth is science, technology, health and innovation. But we do not have to forget the defense cooperation between the two countries. And before I start about defense cooperation, I would talk about the security cooperation which the two countries are going through. The first is the counter-terrorism cooperation. A joint working group was established earlier, and from joint working group we are moving to Homeland Security Dialogue. This was started in 2010, and this is considered an advancement of the relationship between the two countries in the realm of defense and security. Then is Indian Ocean, and quite interestingly, once Indian Ocean was the area of estrangement, I would say, between the two countries. India talked about Indian Ocean as a zone of peace, and for the United States it was a zone of activities. It was a zone of security activities. It was a zone of economic activities, and it did not want India to push this zone of peace argument. Then came this maritime security. Why this maritime security is important for the relationship between the two countries? Because when President Bush joined his presidency, at that time the Cold War had ended, and the two countries had not ended their Cold War relationship. The two countries were still having tense relationship, but as I told you, there were forces in both the countries which were willing to help the two countries in shaping a new relationship. And President Bush, then State Secretary Powell, wanted India to play an important role in Indian Ocean, an active role and a partner of United States. It took some time, and later it was crystallized in maritime security. And now India is expected to become United States partner in protecting sea lanes, in taking care of all the piracy and other WMD activities, and we all know it is an important route not only for United States trade but for the trade of US partners like Japan and Australia. United States had actively encouraged India's role in Indian Ocean region, and under what India has just become IOC chairman, Rim of Countries chairman. So, United States has been issuing very positive statements on India's becoming the chairman of this group, and many of the countries which fall in the region, fall in the zone, are United States partners. So, all the countries are working together, and we all know India is appreciated for its role not only in fighting piracy, but also in disaster management. We can recollect 2004 the tsunami and subsequent disaster situation when India sent its navy to help the countries in the region, and United States really appreciated India's role. So, India is developing a new role in the region. Besides, India is also working with United States in defense cooperation, different defense cooperation, and this defense cooperation has got different dimensions, multiple dimensions, as I would say, and one of the dimensions is exercises. We have got several exercises taking place between US armed forces and Indian armed forces, and now these are quite well known, and one of the forces is one of the exercises is called Satrujit. This Satrujit, and there is another exercise called Yuddha Abhyas, Vajra Prahar. All these are coming on your screen, and there is a series of Malabar exercises between navies involving contraband operations, sea control operation, and air defense exercises. There is sea replacement, including fuel transfer activities, which are also taking place through these Malabar series of exercises, and cross deck flying is also another factor or another important aspect of the exercise of the two countries. Through red flag exercise, we are having this air force level exercise. Air force of the two countries are exercising on that. There is both the countries are also collaborating in multinational operations, including successful peacekeeping operations. They are promoting trade and collaboration in defense equipment and technologies. I would come about the data later. Industry linkages are also taking place, and defense expo of the two countries are really shaping the private level or private sector's partnership of the two countries. There are security dialogues which are also taking place between the two countries, and we had talked about the strategic dialogue, but security dialogue is different, and there are mechanisms, institutional mechanisms for this dialogue. And the first is Defense Joint Working Group. This takes care of mid-year review of progress made in the fulfillment of decision taken by the Defense Policy Group, which is the overarching body. And within this body, all these groups comes: Senior Technology Security Group, Defense Procurement and Production Groups, Joint Technical Groups. All these are also shaping the technological cooperation between the two countries and how defense procurement may be streamlined, because the United States has been complaining that India's procurement policy or India's procurement procedures are hindering the cooperation between the two countries. In reality, it is not so. So, India is explaining its policy, its procedures, and over the years it has really streamlined all these procedures. DPP is coming, and United States is being explained all its procedures through all these groups. Then there is military cooperation group, as we just discussed about, different exercises, different collaborations, the objectives of different collaborations. So, we have to work together, and the service to service executive steering groups, which is a part of military cooperation group, is helping the two countries shaping their relationship. And again, I just talk about the defense cooperation. After 2005, I just talked about this very important framework agreement. After that, in US-India defense trade surpassed $9 billion, and it is a big mark. And it is expected that in next several years, $35 billion potential contracts may be signed between the two countries. And there are several, a screen is showing you, there are several weapons which are entering into the Indian Navy. USS Trenton, US Jalaswa, the second largest C-17 fleet is going to be in India, and we have just purchased 8 P-8I long range maritime patrol aircraft. And we had some problem with medium multi-role combat aircraft tender. We gave a chance to United States companies, but they did not somehow function, or they did not perform well, and we did not give contract to United States companies, and because of that there was some acrimonious exchanges between the two countries. But we explained to the United States through the groups which I just discussed that we have got a procedures, we have a system, and we have to follow our rules, our laws, our systems, our procedures. And we hope and we believe that the United States understood our procedures, understood transparency which has been introduced and which has been prevailing in our system, and they are really sending signals that they are really ready to work with us. And we have signed different defense agreements. This agreement for security measures for protection of classified military information, if we sign, it was signed in January 2002, and this is popularly known as GSOMIA. We also signed master information exchange agreements to facilitate exchange of defense R&D and information. It was signed in February 2004. And there is research, development, testing and evaluation agreement signed in January 2006. And there are other agreements which, I mean, if you are reading newspapers, you are hearing this phrase SISMOA, that is Agreement on the Communication, Interoperability and Security Memorandum of Agreement. We had proposed several amendments. There are other agreements also, logistics, related to logistics, and although there is nothing in the public domain, but the indication is coming that both countries have overcome the agreements. United States has understood India's position, India's problems, and we have got an informal and soon we may have a formal understanding about it. Then I am just moving to nuclear energy. July 2005 famous joint statement really shaped India-US relationship. Then we had 1, 2, 3 agreement. This is official India-United States Civil Nuclear Energy Initiative agreement. And United States helped India in getting nuclear suppliers. This is NSG, is Nuclear Suppliers Group waiver. This is a group of countries which control nuclear goods and nuclear technologies. And there is this group has a guideline, and that guidelines initially prohibited transfer of nuclear goods to India because India is not a member of NPT, and India is not accepting the safeguards which are required for a country which is not having nuclear weapons. As we all know, India is a nuclear weapon country, and so we cannot accept the arrangements designed for a non-nuclear weapon countries. But in 2008, with the help of United States, it was waived. Then United States companies are showing quite willingness, and they are quite active to come in India and start their business. And Mithi-Wardi reactor parks were allocated for United States companies. There are other zones also, like we must have heard about Jaitapur, which was allocated for French. There is Mirpur and Kudankulam area, which were allocated for Russian companies, and similarly Mithi-Wardi reactor parks is for US companies. Then, but there is a problem which is coming in the way, and that is ratification of the Convention of Supplementary Compensation and Civil Nuclear Liability Bill. And that bill is basically is somewhat not being liked by United States, and it wants amendment of the bill or act. But India has made it clear this is our law, and this law reflects aspirations and feelings of the people. So, it cannot be amended, and we have to work for the safety of nuclear reactors, and we are hoping that United States companies and the government both have understood India's situation, India's complications and India's limitations, and soon they will start coming here and start participating in India's nuclear energy endeavor. Then there are other nuclear issues also. Non-proliferation, now India has become a partner. Earlier it was a cause of the estrangement of the relationship. Export controls, which was also called technology denial regimes. So in that also India is becoming a big partner. United States is supporting, endorsing India's membership of the 4 export control regimes. India is being realigned in the US export control system, and many other non-proliferation areas where India and United States have started participating, and United States wants India to participate more in its efforts. And there is nuclear security, to fight against nuclear terrorism, where United States and India are cooperating. Multilateral nuclear fuel cycle is also the area where United States and India have shown their willingness to work together. In bilateral educational cooperation also both countries are working, and this educational cooperation is for developing nuclear energy and nuclear science for other countries also, and I just discussed about multilateral nuclear fuel cycle. Both countries have also participated on Iran in IAEA, which somewhat criticized by other countries, and India's role was criticized also. Why India supported IAEA, why India supported United States on Iran in the IAEA. Nuclear disarmament also was another factor or another issue on which both countries had disagreed in the past, but if you read the joint statements issued by both countries in the last 2 to 3 years, you will find that nuclear disarmament has become an area of cooperation between the two countries. There is new US financial economic partnership, and both countries are working on different areas, and I would just briefly say that from in 2001 India and United States had $18 billion bilateral trade. Now it has increased to reach about $100 billion. It is United States is the 3rd largest source of foreign direct investments, and you can see on your screen how relationship is really growing. And then other business activities are taking place. H1B visa is 40 to 50% is coming to India, and there are other areas also like Indo-US Higher Education Summit. About 100,000 students were in United States in 2010. The people-to-people contact is taking place. Around 650,000 Indians traveled to United States in 2010. And there is open source data. They are partnering in agriculture, in food security, empowering women. So now the world is the limit, and we are witnessing evergreen revolution, SNT Joint Commission meetings, science and technology, different programs in both countries are participating in space, in satellite and weather forecasts, in health programs. So area after area the countries are participating. Both are also this strategic partnership is also imagining the possibilities in Afghanistan, Pakistan. United States has been praising India's role in Afghanistan. It is trying to tame Pakistan. Drone attacks we are reading and we are witnessing. We are having intelligence exchange also. Different energy security programs are also being developed or being cooperated between the two countries. Both countries have also started cooperating in international institutions. United States supported India's membership as a permanent member in United Nations Security Council. in Asian Regional Forum, in East Asia Summit. There are large number of institutions where both countries have Australia started cooperating, which was not seen before. Democracy Fund has come. Democracy once was an area of possible cooperation which could never materialize. But now both the countries are putting funding, and US-India open government dialogue is not only helping the two countries to work on democracy, but also to spread democracy, also to spread knowledge, also to spread data sharing in other countries, especially in Africa. And somehow we are also expanding, or even reaching out to African countries through knowledge cooperation, through democracy. But still there are areas of divergence. Weapons of mass destruction is one. Somehow still United States and India have not overcome all the differences. World Trade Organization is another, where India is taking side with China and other developing world. Pakistan has still not overcome. Technology transfers are being worked out, but still there are issues. And business process outsourcing, which President Obama is still making noise that its jobs are going to India and other countries. India is also explaining the situation that no, it is not the situation. In fact, we are creating jobs for you. In fact, we have started investing in United States. Our companies have started investing in United States, and the market which we are providing is creating jobs for United States. So this dialogue is on, but still dialogue is on. This area has not been overcome. So now I just reached the conclusion, and in the conclusion I would say that in the beginning of the Cold War, I should say, or in the late 1940s or in 50s, we are struggling to shape the relationship in the idealistic paradigm, in the paradigm of democracy, in the paradigm of free market, in the paradigm of capitalism. But now we are turning more realistic. India was always mouthing, or you can say India was always articulating non-alignment, non-violence, powerless politics of the world. But now it is both countries are realizing the realistic dimension, or you can say the realizing the pragmatism in the foreign policies of both the countries. Strategic content is increasing. Institutional framework is being developed, and so many dialogues, so many institutions, so many groups, as I demonstrated, are providing institutional framework for the relationship of the two countries. We are increasing the areas of convergence, and Indian diaspora is emerging as a big factor in shaping the relationship. Indian diaspora is becoming assertive. The Indian diaspora has started using its economic power for its political role. So this is a new dimension, and this political increasing acquisition of political power by the Indian diaspora is really a new beginning in the relationship of the two countries. They will shape and influence the decision making in United States and bring the relationship to a new stage. And both countries will be managing rising Asia or the world. And I should end my talk with the phrase that the relationship is the partnership of the future. The relationship will change the dynamics of emerging dynamics of the world. Thank you very much.
Well explained the all aspect of the Indo-US relation, but one thing I would like to know, in the recent past, because after 20 years when the market was opened, the recent statement of President Obama, the closing of the market for the other countries, how this will alter the focus of Indo-US relationship?
Definitely, even if President Obama wants, he cannot change the complex interdependence of the world. If he wants to change, then other countries would definitely respond, and other countries would respond by reacting to the policy of United States. Other countries would also introduce other policies which may be harmful to United States business, and US business is well aware of this factor, and say they will not allow, and they will intervene in their own policy making process.
Okay.
So ultimately or finally, both the countries and especially United States and President Obama would realize all the dynamics, which you have rightly titled world dynamics. World dynamics is different. It is complex interdependence and no one can ignore it.
So this is the reality. But the statement made by the president, can this be taken as a just to serve the purpose of election of his own?
You hit the right nail. Yes, it is. But even it is being contested. It is being contested by his rival, and his rival Romney is saying that you are taking the country into a wrong direction, and this direction would further ruin the country. And Republican candidates or both presidential and vice presidential candidates have been arguing that President Obama has failed to understand the dynamics of globalization. President Obama and the Democratic Party failed to understand the dynamics of the world which was created by United States, and that you cannot just remain isolated. Isolationist policy was a policy of early 20th century or 19th century. In 21st century, you cannot have this, and if you do it, you will do more damage to yourself. You won't do any damage to India. And a country like United States, in India, we have got our own market. If United States doesn't want to get involved with us economically, and if it denies, and we can confidently stand up and develop our own economy.
Yes.
So we are not afraid of that.
Okay, we have paucity of time, so two more questions I would like to ask. One is related to the recent attack on Gurdwara, because this is not an attack, but it is attack on the community which is prospering there and having major say in the economy of the US. We can say having impact on that. So how do you see as a specialist? Another question is FDI in retail sector. Is it beneficial for the interest of the country or not, for India in particular?
I would take your first question first, about the Gurdwara attack. It had different dimensions. First, as you rightly pointed out, the entry of outsiders into a country which is economically prosperous and which gives an impression to the local people that their jobs have been taken away. But United States is a country of immigrants. United States was developed by immigrants. So that factor is realized, but not by the ignorant people. But this particular factor, this particular incident was something else. It was a case of mistaken identity. It was less a case of the jobs going out to outsiders or illegal immigrants coming into United States, which is a major issue in the United States, and especially people coming from Latin America. This was a case of mistaken identity. Mistaken identity for a former soldier who has been fighting against terrorism, and that soldiers mistakenly thought that this is the group which has been killing people, and we know what he meant by that. I should not like to name that identity. And about the second issue, about retail outfit or retail outlet. Retail outlet, those who have lived in United States would be supporting, for a simple reason that it establishes a direct contact between the producer and the consumer, and it somewhat reduces the role of intermediaries. And with professional management of different supermarkets, which is generally called in United States, you find that consumers are getting items on a reasonable rate, sometimes at a much discounted rate, and farmers are getting better prices, or farmers and other producers are getting better prices. And one very interesting example I will give, I think time is coming to an end. So that example is that some of the artisans from Rajasthan were hired by Walmart to sell handicrafts to Walmart market for of United States, and there are other cases also, and that contract really made these artisans richer. And second is about the case of Mr. Fresh.
Okay.
Mr. Fresh is a dentist from India, and whose toothbrush and toothpaste has captured 45% of American market, and he attributes it to the supermarket, or you can say the retail outfit of United States, which directly took his innovation, marketed it, and consumer got a better item at a cheaper price. So
Okay.
this is
Okay. Well, friends, there is a galore of issues that could be discussed, but in 1 hour that is not possible to touch all of them. So, but Dr. Rajiv Nayan has tried his best to cover the pertinent issues, and which are very related and have concern of all of us. So, I thank him for giving such an insightful
Thank
lecture
you
on
for
this issue,
inviting.
and also thank all of you for watching the lecture. And with these words, we conclude the lecture today. Thank you very much.